Welcome to Analysis Hub. Today we need to talk about David Raya because after Arsenal's recent win against West Ham United, the story around him no longer feels like a small goalkeeper debate. It feels like one of the defining stories of Arsenal's season. This was not a perfect Arsenal performance. This was not a match where Mikel Arteta's team controlled every second, moved the ball with complete rhythm, and removed all danger before it arrived. This was a difficult game, away from home, under pressure, in the middle of a title race, where every mistake can become expensive. And in that kind of match, the moment that matters is not always the goal. Sometimes the moment that matters is the save before the goal. Sometimes the difference between a title-winning team and a team that falls short is not the player who finishes the chance, but the player who keeps the game alive long enough for that chance to arrive. That is why David Raya's performance against West Ham United deserves serious attention. Not because it was dramatic in a cheap way, not because one save alone wins a league title, but because it captured the full journey of a player who arrived at Arsenal under suspicion, absorbed criticism, survived pressure, and is now helping Arsenal stand firm in the most important phase of the season. The situation is this. When David Raya arrived from Brentford, he did not walk into an empty position. He walked into a position occupied by Aaron Ramsdale, a goalkeeper who had become popular with the Arsenal supporters. Aaron Ramsdale had personality. He had energy. He had big saves in important games. He had been part of Arsenal's rise under Mikel Arteta. For many supporters, he represented the emotional side of that rebuild. So when Arsenal brought in David Raya, the question was immediate. Why would Arsenal disturb a position that already looks stable? Why create pressure around the goalkeeper when the team was trying to compete for the Premier League title? Why risk unsettling the dressing room, the fans, and the rhythm of the defence for a change that did not look urgent from the outside? That was the surface debate. But beneath that debate, there was something deeper. Mikel Arteta was not simply choosing between two goalkeepers. He was choosing what kind of Arsenal he wanted to build. At the start, David Raya was not judged in a normal way. Every action was placed under a microscope. A misplaced pass became evidence. A nervous moment became a headline. A difficult claim became a discussion about whether Arsenal had created a problem for themselves. That is the reality of replacing a popular player. You do not begin with trust, you begin with doubt. David Raya was not only competing against Aaron Ramsdale on the training ground, he was competing against the affection that supporters already had for Aaron Ramsdale. He was competing against memory. He was competing against the idea that Arsenal had made a cold decision in a position where many people wanted loyalty to matter more. And for a goalkeeper, that is a dangerous space to live in because the role offers very little hiding place. A striker can miss a chance and wait for another. A midfielder can lose the ball and recover it later. But when a goalkeeper makes a mistake, the whole stadium sees it, the replay repeats it, and the debate begins again. But here is the problem. Elite football does not wait for emotion to become comfortable. Elite football forces clubs to make difficult decisions before everyone agrees with them. Mikel Arteta looked at David Raya and saw more than a shot stopper. He saw a goalkeeper who could help Arsenal control matches from the first pass. He saw a player comfortable with the ball at his feet, calm under pressure, willing to play through the press, and able to hit longer passes when the opponent closed the short options. He saw a goalkeeper who could claim crosses, manage space behind a high defensive line, and help Arsenal defend before the shot even happened. That is important because modern goalkeeping is no longer only about the spectacular save. It is about structure. It is about the distance between the goalkeeper and the centre-backs. It is about whether the defensive line feels brave enough to stay high. It is about whether the team can invite pressure without panic. David Raya was signed because Arsenal wanted more control, and control is one of the hidden currencies of a title race. The evidence suggests that Arsenal's faith in David Raya was not built on sentiment. It was built on a tactical idea. When Arsenal dominate the ball, the goalkeeper becomes part of the possession structure. When Arsenal are pressed, the goalkeeper becomes the escape route. When opponents go direct, the goalkeeper becomes the first defender of the penalty area. When the match becomes tense, the goalkeeper becomes the emotional temperature of the team. That is where David Raya has grown. He has not become important only because of one performance against West Ham United. He has become important because over time, Arsenal have started to look more secure with him. The passing has become cleaner. The defensive line has become more confident. The panic around him has reduced. And slowly, the conversation has changed. At first, people asked why Arsenal needed David Raya. Now, after performances like this, people have to ask where Arsenal would be without him. The match against West Ham United gave us the perfect image of that change. Arsenal were in a dangerous game state. The score was still level. West Ham United had not been completely removed from the contest. Arsenal were not flowing with total authority. There were moments where the game stretched, where the space opened, where one wrong movement could have punished them. And then came the kind of moment that lives quietly inside a title race. Matheus Fernandes found the chance. West Ham United had the opportunity to strike first. For Arsenal, that was not just a normal danger. That was a potential turning point. Go behind in a match like that, and the whole feeling changes. The crowd changes. The opponent grows. The pressure on every Arsenal pass becomes heavier. The title race starts to enter the mind. And then David Raya made the save. That save mattered because it protected Arsenal from emotional damage. It stopped West Ham United from taking control of the story. It gave Arsenal time to breathe. It allowed Mikel Arteta's players to stay inside the match instead of chasing it with anxiety. And only after that did Arsenal find the decisive goal through Leandro Trossard. That is why we should not separate the goal from the save. The goal won the match on the scoreboard, but the save protected the path to that goal. In a title race, those moments are connected. A goalkeeper does not always win points with a clean sheet alone. Sometimes he wins points by preventing the one moment that would have changed everything. Against West Ham United, David Raya did exactly that. This is where the story becomes bigger than David Raya as an individual. Arsenal are trying to become a team that can win even when the performance is not perfect. That is one of the hardest steps in the evolution of a serious side. Attractive football is important. Dominant possession is important. Goals from the forwards are important. But title-winning teams also need ugly control. They need calm when the rhythm breaks. They need players who can survive the uncomfortable minutes. They need a goalkeeper who does not only look good when the team is already comfortable, but who can protect the team when the structure bends. David Raya's value is in that protection. He gives Arsenal a level of security that is not always loud, but it is deeply important. There is also a psychological layer here. When defenders trust the goalkeeper behind them, they defend differently. William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes can hold a higher line with more conviction. The fullbacks can step into midfield with less fear. The midfield can press forward, knowing that the space behind them is being managed. The whole team can move with more courage. That is the hidden influence of a goalkeeper. The save is visible. The confidence he creates is less visible, but sometimes even more important. David Raya has moved from being a question inside Arsenal's system to being one of the reasons the system can function under pressure. And that brings us back to Mikel Arteta. His decision to bring in David Raya was not easy. It was not universally popular. It placed pressure on Aaron Ramsdale. It placed pressure on David Raya. It placed pressure on the manager himself. If David Raya had failed, the criticism would have been simple. People would have said Arsenal created a problem where there was no problem. They would have said loyalty should have mattered more. They would have said Mikel Arteta overcomplicated the goalkeeper position. But football at the highest level is often judged late. Some decisions look strange at the beginning because the full purpose has not yet been revealed. David Raya's recent performances are starting to reveal that purpose. The deeper lesson is about standards. Arsenal are no longer trying to be a promising team that people admire from a distance. They are trying to become a team that wins. That change requires hard choices. It requires competition in every position. It requires the manager to look beyond popularity and ask a colder question. What does this team need to take the next step? David Raya is a symbol of that question. He represents Arsenal's move from emotional growth to competitive maturity. He represents the idea that trust is not only given because a player is liked. Trust is earned through reliability, detail, and performance under pressure. If Arsenal go on to win the Premier League, people will remember the goals. They will remember the attacking moments. They will remember the big performances from the stars in midfield and attack. But they should also remember the quieter moments that held the season together. They should remember David Raya standing firm when the match against West Ham United could have slipped. They should remember that before Arsenal scored, their goalkeeper kept them alive. They should remember that a player once surrounded by doubt became one of the clearest examples of Arsenal's growing stability. So the final point is this. David Raya did not arrive at Arsenal as the comfortable choice. He arrived as the controversial choice. He arrived into pressure, comparison, and criticism. But now, as Arsenal continue to push forward in the title race, he looks less like a risk and more like a reason. A reason Arsenal can control games. A reason they can survive difficult moments. A reason the defence can trust the space behind them. A reason Mikel Arteta's standards are starting to make sense. And if this season ends with Arsenal lifting the trophy, David Raya's story will not be a side note. It will be part of the explanation, because titles are not only won by the players who create the biggest noise. Sometimes they are won by the players who keep everything from falling apart when the noise is at its loudest.